Hello, and welcome to I Hate Talking, a podcast about talking, including etymology, frustrating topics, current events, and other random subjects. I'm Adam.
And I'm Steph. We are married, and we invite you into these discussions with us as we talk about the good and the bad of talking.
We hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome to episode 18 of I Hate Talking.
Hi, everyone.
So we have since completed our 3-part mini-series on money and money dysmorphia and a variety of things that we've talked about. So we are going to be moving on to new topics. But before we do, we have our word or phrase of the episode. And our word or phrase of today's episode is toxic. Toxic.
Ooh, I wonder which way you're going to go with this.
Well, there's a lot of different ways we could go with this because toxic can refer to, I think, typically the adjective where it is describing something that is poisonous or something that's very harmful or unpleasant in a pervasive or insidious way, according to the Oxford Dictionary. It actually also can be used in terms of a noun, where the noun means poisonous substances. And I think what you are alluding to in terms of the ways that we could go with that particular word, or maybe this word won't even be related to the topic that we discussed today. You'll have to continue listening. But I think that you are referring to perhaps that it could be used in terms of like toxic masculinity or toxic relationships, or even as a callback to our previous episodes, toxic debt.
Yeah, definitely. I think nowadays in culture, that's a very big buzzword or just a word that's used and thrown around a lot for something that either is really toxic, like poisonous and dangerous, or just for something that we don't like that's hurting our lifestyle or hurting the way we want to live.
So that is our word or phrase of the episode, toxic, as it relates to poisonous substances or something that's very harmful or unpleasant in a pervasive or insidious way. So before we go on to our topic, we're going to do something that I think many podcasts do, and that is invite you to share this episode or share a previous episode that you've enjoyed with your friends and family. And be sure to go on there, like, comment, do all the things that helps us continue to grow on the variety of platforms that we're listed on. So a plug there for our own podcast, I Hate Talking.
Yes, please do. Before we had a podcast, I didn't really understand the importance of just even hitting that star button, 5 stars, or especially doing reviews. All that takes just a quick second and really helps us out and helps other people find our podcast.
So we are going to be talking about something that I think is, as a society, pretty well accepted within our culture here in the United States. We are going to be talking about a certain substance that people enjoy, but that it potentially has some negative effects. This particular thing that we have in mind can be enjoyed at any time of the day, but there is a certain time of day that typically people are going to partake. It can be made in a whole host of different ways, and it can be enjoyed socially, and it's actually socially acceptable to gather to enjoy this particular thing at local businesses that sell this, as well as potentially partaking alone. And there's many different ways that you can do this yourself even, but on to the negative effects of this particular thing. It can cause sleep problems. So this particular thing can cause issues with falling asleep, good sleep, those type of things. It can have effects on your nervous system. It can cause anxiety, irritability, and restlessness. It even can have effects on your organs. One of the examples is heart effects. It can raise your heart rate, blood pressure, and even make your heart beat unevenly. This also can have impacts on your digestive system with regards to causing heartburn or stomach problems, and actually causes some imbalance in your pH within your body. It can cause headaches, dizziness, muscle tremors, frequent urination, and dehydration. And if you don't partake of these things, it actually can cause withdrawal, where you would get a headache or be nervous or have fatigue. And it's highly recommended that people don't partake in this during pregnancy or breastfeeding. And of course, I think our listeners, as well as yourself, know exactly what I'm talking about, and that is
Alcohol.
coffee.
Ah!
So I think probably a lot of our thoughts did go to the alcohol subject, because I think a lot of those things that I read in more of a generic fashion are true for alcohol, but all those things that I just listed out are based on Mayo Clinic's article on the negative effects of coffee.
Oh no. Well, I can do without alcohol, but I don't want to go without coffee. So I think I'm going to not like this conversation.
So it is interesting to note that the United States, and really I think even the globe in general, have accepted that caffeine and alcohol are the acceptable, quote unquote, drugs of choice that people partake in. And both of those things, I think, have a really storied past and a long history from the early days. And perhaps for some cultures you might swap in tea versus coffee, but still the root effect of caffeine being what is being sought after. So indeed, I think that we can perhaps consider the intake of alcohol, but also the intake of caffeine in terms of how it impacts our health and well-being. We, I think, do drink coffee on the regular. I think that there are a lot of people within the workplace that drink coffee, and that is, again, something that's very socially acceptable, and even had instances where if people don't drink coffee, it's sort of an oddity.
Yeah. You would know this, but I actually did not drink caffeine by choice. It was an intentional thing until after my first son was born. If I had a soda, it was either a Sprite or like a root beer. I think usually doesn't have caffeine. And then they had like a diet decaf Coke. If I felt super crazy, it was a special occasion, I'd go to Starbucks and get a decaf, like Frappuccino, which does have a little caffeine in it, but not as much as the regular. But it was a very intentional thing, and people thought it was so odd that I didn't drink caffeine.
So could we even consider coffee then to be toxic?
Yes, but I also want to keep drinking it.
And you mentioned another one in there that I think has some negative effects, which is your diet
I love
caffeine-free soda.
I love Diet Coke.
So the aspartame, read some studies, and those indicate that actually creates a literal poison in your brain when your body breaks down those particular things that are used to sweeten that particular drink.
Oh, man.
So quite literally a toxin, a neurotoxin even. So on to the next thing, though, that was mentioned, and that is alcohol and all its many different forms. We have actually, just as of yesterday, completed our version of Dry January, except we do it during July, so we call it Dry July, which I actually think has a better ring to it anyway. And I did hear another time period, I guess, that people skip the drink, and that is Sober October. That was actually the first time I've heard that today, but I guess people do that as well.
Yeah, that was a good ring too.
So we have just finished our Dry July, which we actually start on July 5th because we will typically, and as is socially acceptable and even to some degree expected, have a drink or two on the 4th of July, our Independence Day here in America, and then move on from there and basically do not drink any alcohol from July 5th until July 31st.
Yeah. It sounds crazy when people hear it. And maybe in the very beginning, I was like, oh, we went on a date recently, had a babysitter. We're like, well, we can't go to, what are we going to do? It was at night, so we didn't want to get coffee. And we didn't really want, it wasn't dinner time. So, like normally we're like, oh, let's get a glass of wine or a beer. But we couldn't. So we felt really limited on like, well, what can we get if we're not getting dinner and you're not getting a beer? We ended up walking around our downtown and it was super sweet and I loved it. And I drank a glass of water. And so it was much cheaper also.
Indeed. And I think we actually saw many people that were in that downtown area for the express purpose of drinking. So
Yes.
we were on the other end of the spectrum that evening.
Yes, definitely. But also, so we intentionally do this because we think it's healthy for our body and mind. Other people do it for other times or whatnot. But also, let's not forget, like for pregnancy, like every time I've been pregnant, I go over 9 months without any alcohol. And it's not hard. It's not like this burden that people are shocked about. So I don't know why it's expected to have a beer every time unless you're pregnant. Because if I was pregnant and had a beer, that'd be a huge faux pas. Lots of people would get upset.
Indeed. And I don't know exactly where that does come from, but it does seem that it is a social thing in terms of that. And I guess in some ways, if you are drinking socially, that is better and preferred over drinking alone, because that is a sign of particular reliance on alcohol as a coping mechanism, perhaps. But yes, it does seem that it is socially acceptable and, like we said, even expected to partake in alcohol.
Okay, so I definitely hesitate bringing this up because I feel like you're going to hold me to it. But like, I know I feel much better when I don't have a beer or a glass of wine. Like, it definitely is enjoyable, and in social situations with a friend, I enjoy it. But overall, I don't feel good when I drink that kind of stuff. So I'm fine not doing it. And so as you're listing off these things, I'm like, well, maybe I'd feel better if I didn't have caffeine. I did it for the first 28 years of my life. I could do it again. But I still stick with that. I probably would feel better without caffeine, but I don't want to do it.
And we did mention at the very start of the episode that there would be potential symptoms of withdrawal if you are skipping the caffeine. And I think that's also true if you're skipping the alcohol and are reliant on it to that degree, that you would have some of those symptoms of withdrawal, which, like we said, headache, nervousness, fatigue, and things of that nature. So I think that perhaps based on our level of consumption of coffee and caffeine, we would probably experience some of those things.
Right. Well, remember, obviously when I'm pregnant or whatnot, can't drink caffeine, especially to, like you said, the level we do. But there's a protocol that I would do that was vitamin C. When you're trying to get off caffeine, like I would take a couple of vitamin C every few hours. I'd have to look up the exact protocol. But it actually helps with the headache and all that, and it eases you out of it pretty well. So I know I could do that, but it's just I love the flavor. It is enjoyable.
Indeed. And I think those things that you're gaining from the vitamin C in large doses, which supposedly you can't overdose on vitamin C, but if you do take a significant amount of vitamin C as a supplement, it actually can increase your energy levels and give you some of those, almost like a caffeine high.
Talk to your doctor. We're not.
Yes, this
doctors
is
here.
not medical advice in any form or fashion. This is expressly the opinion of these hosts only. So I think that is true in terms of, yes, just enjoying the flavor of coffee and routine of coffee even, which I think is also to some degree can be true for an alcoholic drink. Case in point, when we were having a cookout this mid-July, you and I both were craving a beer to go with our burgers that we grilled at home and all the sides, as well as the other day I was having some sirloin steak and was wishing that I had a glass of red wine to go with that. So I think there are some flavor profiles and parts of things that we can enjoy from a taste perspective and even a routine perspective that are valid and perhaps can be enjoyed in moderation.
Yeah, I mean, some of those can add to the experience, like add to the flavor. We've been to both coffee and wine tastings where you'll take a sip of it and then you'll take a piece of chocolate maybe and then drink again, and it's completely different. It changes the food that you are eating for the better.
Or for the worse if it's not a good pairing.
I guess so, yeah.
But yes, that would be the intent, is to have those pairings that do enhance both the flavor of the food as well as the flavor of the wine or coffee or whatever the particular drink of choice is.
So, another time this month, I was somewhere. It was just me with the kids, and multiple people tried to hand me a drink. They're being very hospitable, and I appreciated it. I was the only adult there not drinking. And I just kept saying, no, thank you. I got nervous because I was like, oh, maybe they're going to think I'm pregnant. So I'm going to suck in my stomach. But also, like I was worried that they were going to ask about that. Or I was definitely singled out, like being the odd person. And I felt uncomfortable just because I felt the host was really trying to be hospitable. And I felt very awkward in that situation. And so again, I try to put myself into like back when I used to not consume any of this stuff, caffeine or anything, people would offer it and it didn't seem to bother me. Maybe I was just younger back then or more confident. I didn't mind just saying no if someone offered me a coffee or anything like that. So I don't know why now I'm like, oh, this looks awkward. I'm offending them. Does that make sense?
Indeed, and I think that perhaps that goes not only to your own confidence, but also, like you mentioned, how you appear to them, and maybe that will impact their confidence because, again, it's just a failed social interaction when somebody declines to take them up on their offer. So maybe both parties are a little bit at play there in terms of their confidence and just whether that social interaction is considered a success or failure.
Right. And like, I didn't want to make it a thing. I didn't want to make them feel uncomfortable. Like I'm holier than thou or something. I think is the other thing people assume. Like, oh, you're too good for this. Like, no, I don't mind. I'm not upset that you guys are having a beer. I'm choosing not to.
Precisely. So we have some toxicity in the form of caffeine or coffee or tea. And we have some toxicity in the form of alcohol, whether that be wine or a beer or a mixed drink of some sort. What are your thoughts on the toxicity of fruits and vegetables?
Like the stuff that they inject in it to make it look beautiful?
No, I'm actually referring to a theory that I think does hold some weight where plants have certain forms of defense so that predators don't eat them, and that while we as humanity have bred certain plants to be more fruitful and better tasting and to have less of those attributes where they're thorny or poisonous or whatever the case may be, that they still retain some toxicity when we eat them. And actually, for those that consume a lot of plants in terms of fruits and vegetables, that actually can have a toxic effect on the body.
Yeah, like it's a known thing, right? When babies have sweet potatoes, that tends to be one of their first foods. If they eat a lot of them, their skin will change colors. It's turned to like an orangish color.
Yep. So, and this again, maybe a little bit of confirmation bias because it is a theory held to some of the dietitians that follow more of a ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet. But one of the people that I think is noteworthy that does hold to this particular view is Bear Grylls. He went on a basically all plant diet for a while and felt terrible and was not doing well, and then switched to basically a all meat diet with supplemented by butter and animal fats and things of that nature, and has had none of the issues that he described when he was purely a vegetarian.
Huh. I wonder too, like I know there's allergies, especially to like seafood and shellfish and stuff. But is there much of an allergy towards beef or turkey? Because there's a ton. Like I can't eat eggplant. I'm not completely sick. I don't get very sick on it, but it's very uncomfortable. My mouth for several days after eating eggplant, and I have other family members that can't eat a whole slew of fruits and vegetables. So is that the kind of toxicity also in play that wouldn't be in meats?
So I do think we are using the word toxic in a more generalized sense in terms of referring to a particular allergy as toxic, because typically toxic means poisonous, and like we've said at the start of the episode, poisonous substances or having a undue effect that is globally applicable, where that is going to be toxic to everyone. But for example, there could be certain substances that are toxic to humans that can be eaten just fine by deer or other animals and even mammals that would be quite deadly to a person.
Okay.
And then you can actually be allergic to beef. This is a syndrome called alpha-gal syndrome, or AGS for short, and it is basically a red meat allergy, and that is actually typically associated with the bite of the Lone Star tick. So you actually can get that particular meat allergy, red meat allergy, if you come in contact with the Lone Star tick that has that particular disease within that tick. And that's actually not, I guess, as I'm looking here at some of the research, a proven relationship, but does seem to have some association there.
Okay.
All right. So before we wrap up this episode, let's end it perhaps with maybe some of our favorite drinks, coffee, alcohol, or otherwise. And after that, all our listeners can go hit that like button, share, subscribe, etc., etc.
And let us know what their favorite drinks are.
There you go. You can always send us a text, send us an email, or leave a comment on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on.
Yeah, I'll go first. Obviously what I drink the most is water, but it's a little specific. I don't like cold water. And I don't like hot water. It has to be lukewarm, maybe slightly on the cool side. I do love to chew ice, which is not good. If any dentists are out here, cover your ears. But I do like to chew ice, but I like lukewarm water. I love Diet Coke, like we've said before, or Diet Pepsi. I'm actually not picky either way. Americanos. So espresso with water added is my biggest go-to every morning. And then I really love IPAs for beer, or a good cab, just for a red wine. And I love, one of my favorite, I have two red wines that I love. A Lode is one name, and then a Josh. Both are cabs, and I love it. And we have a Josh cab in our house right now. And I look forward to one day opening it up and drinking it soon because now that we don't have to go the whole month without drinking. And it is very enjoyable. And then for harder drinks that I would order if I was out is an old fashioned or a martini with olives.
There you go. Well, like yourself, I do enjoy a nice glass of water, and also don't really prefer that to be cold or hot.
Yeah.
So I do occasionally drink hot water with lemon, typically in the morning.
People, sorry to interrupt you. People come to our house, and I have to be mindful to get cool water because we don't have like a fridge that has water in it. And so that's another oddity. When people come to our house, we don't have cold water for them. And I'm like, oh no, we don't drink cold water. But go on.
And also enjoy teas of all varieties, typically black teas, but also will enjoy chai tea, both hot and cold, typically unsweetened. So those are my drinks of choice. And from the coffee perspective, typically black coffee, so anything espresso based, so the Americanos or just straight espresso. We'll occasionally add maybe a splash of milk. Do enjoy cappuccinos, lattes on occasion as well. When I'm doing keto, I will add a splash of heavy whipping cream to said coffee, and typically prefer the mid-roast to dark roast. Don't typically prefer the light roast, which I guess supposedly that is more caffeine content in the light roast. So
wow.
There you go. We're avoiding the toxicity. Also enjoy red wine, typically cabs as well, but some Pinots and some other varieties every once in a while. The Lodi red that you were referring to is one of my favorites as well, with coming out of the Lodi region in California. There's one particularly that we like that is produced by Michael David Winery. So we'll add that to the show notes. We can get that here in our locale, but it is based in California. And enjoy low sugar wine. So Grazie wine is another one that comes to mind. Again, a red wine, but they do have a rosé and white variety as well. I've always enjoyed lagers from the beer perspective, and in my later adult years have come to enjoy IPAs as well, with some of the more odd beers out there with like some saisons and things of that nature. Always up to try those and enjoy those, as long as they're not too fruity or too just strange tasting in my palate, I guess. I don't know how other to put that, but and then from the spirits perspective, definitely a vodka person. Vodka tonic with lime, always one of my favorites. I've actually also gone to vodka and pickle juice recently.
It's so gross.
And actually will enjoy pickle juice even on its own. So lots of different things that we enjoy. Some of those things toxic, some of those things not so much. But from your friends at I Hate Talking, until next time, remember, it is only through talking that we begin the journey to understanding.